Writing my 10 books on guitar, I discovered every instrument has a story. My personal guitar story began in 1960 in Liverpool. However, Hank Marvin and Bruce Welch's story takes us back to the post-war Britain of the 1950s. Bruce Welch takes up the story.
Hank and I went to school together from the age of 11, and we're from Newcastle on Tyne. And in 1956, Skiffle and Rock came to the UK. Bill Haley had been in 55 with Rock Around the Clock. Anyway, our homegrown rock and roller was Tommy Steele. Tommy was the first one in the UK. And he was discovered, I used to read the Daily Mirror of all things. I don't now, by the way. But I read he'd been discovered in this coffee bar in Soho in London, Italian coffee bar. So I said to Hank, we got to go. We had a skiffle group at school. Everybody in the world had a skiffle group because of Lonnie Donegan. A couple of guys in Liverpool, John and Paul, you may have heard of, had a skiffle group. The Hollies had a skiffle group. We're from Newcastle, we had a skiffle group. Everybody had a skiffle group. Anyway, Hank and I left school early because we were really caught up in this. We didn't even sit our exams at school, which is serious stuff. And we came to London when we were 16 with our skiffle group, the Railroaders, came down for a competition. I think it was the all-UK skiffle group competition. Anyway, we lost. We came third. And the two other guys in the band said, well, we're going home tomorrow. And Hank and I said, we think we'll stay. And we decided to stay in London. And obviously that was the best thing we ever did. And the next day we turned up at this Two Eyes coffee bar in Soho. Pictures on the wall, Tommy Steele, the Vipers skiffle group, so-and-so skiffle group. And we got talking to the manager. We were known as the Geordie Boys, obviously. Nobody could understand what we were saying. I said, is there any chance of, we play in a group. He said, everybody plays in a group, Anyway, we somehow wangled, we could play there maybe 4 nights a week, and we would earn 18 shillings, which was 80p. So 4 nights a week, if we were lucky, we would be playing any not all the time, between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. That was the Two Eyes opening. And we went there in April of 1958, the first week of April 1958. And we stayed in the Two Eyes all summer, April, May, June, July, August, September. Meeting, playing, people would play. Can we get up and play with you? Can we sing with you? Can I play drums? So we didn't work every night of the week. And on the nights that we weren't working, I used to sell orange juice downstairs in a hot, sweaty cellar, a bit like the cabin, that sort of hot and sweaty. And Hank wasn't there that night, and one guy came down with his band, and it was Cliff Richard. That was early days, probably April of 1958. Of course, nobody knew who he was, but he looked fantastic. Already had the Elvis. So I went back to Hank that night and said, there was a great guy in tonight, Cliff Richard and the Drifters, and never thought anything of it, really. And so a few months went by, and during those few months, a tiny little stage, and people would, Hank and I would be singing the Everly Brothers, Elvis, Buddy Holly, the Crickets, all the hit songs of the day. And people would say, do you mind if I get up and play bass with you? Or can I play drums with you? And Jed Harris, a guy called Jed Harris, got up with us. We didn't know who he was. He was a great player. Thought he was James Dean. He got up and played. Another night, Hank and I were 16. So another night, there was a little kid standing in front of us, right near the front. He had a little cap on. And he said, do you mind if I sit in on drums? Can I play drums? And I said, yeah. Everybody help yourself. And that was Tony Meehan. We didn't know. We went, just, hello, Tony, hi. And Brian Bennett was down there. Brian was the resident drummer at the Two Eyes. He was a much older man. He was 18. And Licorice Locking came down because he was a friend of Brian's. So within those few months of 1958 in the summer, without knowing it, the Shadows actually, people who became the Shadows, all played together in not knowing what was to come, you know. And in September we had nowhere else to go, Hank and I, so we'd be there all day. We would go down and have a coffee or a soft drink or whatever, and people would drop in and sort of rehearse downstairs in the cellar, you know, before 7 o'clock. And there were two great guitarists, and I do mean great for young people. Like Hank was one, he was tremendous, and a guy called Tony Sheridan was the other guy, another great guitarist. And when I say great guitarist, they could play all the licks off all of the hits. So that made you a great guitarist. I mean, Hank could actually play the intro to That'll Be the Day, so he was on a different level, you know, playing this sort of stuff. Anyway, we're fiddling around one day, and a guy came down, and black leather, and he said, I'm Cliff Richard's manager. Oh, yeah. And he said, I'm looking for a lead guitarist. We're going to do a tour in 3 weeks' time. This is September. Lead guitarist, and I've heard... so Hank was there. Tony Sheridan wasn't there. So Hank said, well, I'll play you. So Hank played all the licks of the day. And this guy called John Foster said, yeah, that's great. He said, it's a 3-week tour, you know, and I'd like to come around the corner and meet Cliff. He's having his tailored jacket made. So Hank said, well, really, I'll do it. I'll do it if my mate can come, my friend can come. He's a really good rhythm player. So, okay, all right. So the three of us came out of the Two Eyes, wandered round to Dean Street, up a flight of stairs, and there was the apparition, you know, standing there with his, being fitted for his pink jacket. So we all had pimples. He had pimples, but he had the sideburns. Hank and I got pimples, you know. You know. And that's how we met Cliff. He said, will you come back to my house and we'll have a rehearsal, you know, check it out. An audition, really, but a rehearsal. So Hank and I got on a bus, a Green Line bus outside the BBC, and Cliff lived in a place called Cheshunt in Hertfordshire. Lived in a council house with his 3 sisters and his mum and dad. And we commandeered the front room. You know, everybody had a front room in those days. The best room in the house was the front room. And we rehearsed for 3 or 4 hours playing, you know, Ricky Nelson, Elvis, the Everleys, Buddy Holly, and Cliff said, great. He said, it sounds great. He said, right, it's 3 weeks. We're starting October the 5th, and that'll be great. So October the 5th came. 3 weeks later, the tour finished, but it didn't finish because we were part of his group then. We were the Drifters.
And those Drifters guitars likely needed a setup. But in 1958, there were no guitar techs, and even basic tools for setting up guitars were very hard to find. Thankfully, things have moved on, and these days you can find all the tools you need and lots of helpful expert advice. Every guitar can be made to play and sound better with a little TLC. I want to help, so if you have any specific challenges with your guitar, drop me an email and I will help. Bruce has many more fascinating stories coming soon in Guitar Story. Check out my new digital manuals with all the setup help you need, now with free professional video supplements.